Have you ever wondered why certain situations freeze you, even when you know they shouldn't? Like, you want to speak up in a meeting, but your voice shakes just thinking about it. You want to get close to someone, but you pull away before even trying. You try to ask for a raise, but something inside says, you don't deserve it. They'll find out you're not good enough. Better not even try. And then comes the question. Why do you act this way? If no one said that to you today, the answer might be in a place you don't even notice. The past. But not in the obvious sense. Not as, it was traumatic. Not as, I've moved on. The past we're talking about here never actually ended. Because, to your brain, what happened 5, 10, or 20 years ago is still happening right now. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about in the next hour. How rejections, losses, or humiliations from the past create emotional blocks. And why your brain keeps treating them like current threats. Because trauma doesn't need to be big. Sometimes, all it takes is one phrase. One look. One silence. And once it's recorded, it becomes an invisible program. This is dangerous. You're not safe. If you move forward, you'll get hurt. And that program keeps running. Even after you've grown. Even after the world has changed. Even when you deserve more. So let's start with a simple question. Have you really left the past behind? Or has it just changed shape? Let's imagine a scene. You're 8 years old. You're in the schoolyard. Everyone is paired up, playing, laughing. You walk toward a group. You smile. Try to join in. And then, someone says, "Nah, you don't need to come with us. You ruin everything. Just stay quiet. No one called you. You don't cry. You don't argue. You go back to class. You pretend it doesn't matter. But something shifts inside you. Something small, silent, deep. In that moment, your brain records a truth. If I get close, I'll be rejected. My presence is a burden. It's safer to stay alone. And that truth doesn't die. It hides. It waits. And it returns every time you try to open up. Every time you consider being seen. Every time you take a risk. And the strangest part? You don't even remember the scene. But your body does. Now, another story. You're 25. You meet someone. Everything seems to click. But on the third date, they disappear. No explanation. No reply. You try to understand. Then, you let go. You move on. Years later, you enter a new relationship. Everything goes well. But when you start to truly care, you do something strange. You provoke conflict. Test the person. Or you leave first. Why? Because deep down, a part of you believes. When I give myself, I get abandoned. Real love hurts. It's better to leave before I get hurt. And this isn't lack of trust. It's an emotional block. An old wound turned into a survival rule. And your brain, loyal to it, repeats the pattern. Not to punish you, but to protect you. Here's a powerful idea. Trauma isn't what happened. It's what your nervous system learned from it. Because the human brain doesn't clearly distinguish between past and present. It only knows. I've lived this before. It was dangerous. I need to protect myself. And it does so without asking. Without warning. Without waiting for your permission. It's like an automatic alarm. It went off once, and now it rings every time something similar appears. A compliment, are they lying? An invitation, what if I'm rejected? An opportunity, what if I fail? The fear doesn't come from the present. It comes from an old memory. And as long as that memory isn't updated, you'll keep acting like you're still in that moment. And the worst part? You don't even know you're living it. Because trauma doesn't always scream. Most of the time, it whispers. Through phrases you repeat. I never succeed. This isn't for me. It's going to fail. That's just how I am. Or through emotions that appear out of nowhere. Anxiety before sending an email. Sadness with no clear reason. Fear of being seen. And you justify it. I'm just anxious. It's my personality. I've always been like this. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's just the past. Dressed as normality. Let me tell you a secret. Most of the decisions you make today aren't based on what you want. They're based on what your past taught you was safe. For example, you don't change jobs because you don't have time. But because at age 12, you heard, you can't handle it. You don't confess your feelings because you prefer to wait. But because as a teen, you were mocked for liking someone. You don't invest in yourself because it's not a priority. But because as a child, you learned, taking care of others is noble. Taking care of yourself is selfish. See, these weren't extreme traumas. They were experiences. Repetitions. Silences. Looks. But your brain registered them as danger. And now, it freezes any movement that feels risky. Now, I want to ask you a question. When was the last time you tried something new? And felt an irrational fear take over? As if an inner voice said, stop. Go back. It's not worth it. You'll regret it. Better to quit now. If this has ever happened to you, and you don't know where it came from, there's likely a hidden memory. A subtle trauma, but powerful. A negative experience that became a law. And that's exactly what we'll talk about now. How to identify these emotional blocks in everyday life. Because recognizing the fear is the first step. But understanding where it came from, that's what sets you free. Let's go there. Now that you understand the past may still be active inside you, even when you don't remember it. Let's move to the next question. How do you know an emotional block is holding you back? Because, as we've seen, these blocks don't come with warning signs like caution, old trauma at work. They disguise themselves as fear, laziness, insecurity. Or even, just how things are. But they leave traces. Patterns. Repetitions. Familiar feelings of discomfort. And that's exactly what we're going to explore now. The clear signs that a painful experience from the past is still in charge. You don't need therapy to recognize this. You already have all the clues. You just need to pause and look. Sign 1, you avoid before you even try. This is one of the strongest signs. You want something, a relationship, a project, recognition. But before you even begin, a weight appears. A knot in your stomach. A voice saying, better not to try. It's going to fail. You won't make it. And then, you quit. Not because you don't want it, but out of loyalty to an old memory. For example, a woman dreams of starting her own business. She has everything planned. But every time she gets close to taking the first step, sudden fear shows up. She loses motivation. Delays again. Years later, she discovers. At age 10, she saw her father lose everything on a failed venture. He said, business is for dreamers. No one succeeds at this. In that moment, her brain recorded. Starting a business equals loss. Taking risks equals suffering. Now, every time she thinks of beginning, her nervous system responds. Danger. Retreat. But she doesn't know that. She only feels the fear. Sign 2, you self-sabotage at the perfect moment. Another clear sign. When you're about to succeed, and you do something that ruins it. Like, after months of eating well, you binge at dinner. When someone praises you, you downplay it or change the subject. The night before a big presentation, you stay up late on purpose. This isn't laziness. It's an emotional block in action. Because, for your brain, success can be as dangerous as failure. Why? Because success changes the routine. It brings attention. It demands responsibility. And most importantly, it confirms you're capable. Something that, in the past, may have been punished. See. Smart or sensitive children were often silenced. Stop thinking you're better. Be quiet, don't bother anyone. Who do you think you are? And over time, the brain learns. If I stand out, I'll be rejected. Being seen hurts. So when success arrives, your inner system sounds the alarm. Go back to where it's safe. This is too risky. And you, without realizing it, obey. Sign 3, you feel shame where others feel pride. This one is silent, but deeply revealing. You achieve something. Someone compliments you. And instead of feeling good, you feel shame. As if thinking, I don't deserve this. They'll find out I'm a fraud. It was luck, not skill. That feeling isn't humility. It's an emotional block. Because at some point, you learn that recognition brings envy. Success attracts criticism. Being good is dangerous. And now, every win triggers that fear. It's like your body says, careful. This is dangerous. They'll hurt you again. And you, naturally, pull back. Sign 4, you repeat the same kind of pain. This is one of the most painful, and common, patterns. You choose people who devalue you. Or start projects you end up sabotaging. Or take jobs where you're not respected. And when someone asks, why do you stay in this? You say, I don't know. That's just how it is. Everyone goes through this. But it's not true. You're repeating a pattern. Because your brain believes. Love means suffering. Work is duty. Worth comes with pain. These beliefs didn't appear from nowhere. They were learned in real moments. Like when you were betrayed and heard, love hurts. You were humiliated in public and no one helped. You lost someone and learned, getting close is dangerous. And now, even without wanting to, you seek the familiar. Because the brain prefers the known over the unknown. Even if the known hurts. Sign 5, you justify with reality, but it's trauma. This one is especially dangerous. Because the block disguises itself as truth. You say, that's just how the world is. People are like that. Relationships are hard. But really, it's just your trauma dressed as reality. For example, if you were abandoned as a child, you might believe everyone leaves. You can never trust. The ones who love you run away. And so, you avoid intimacy. Test people. Or break up before you're happy. And when someone asks, why don't you trust? You reply, because that's how things are. But it's not. It's just how you learn things are. The difference is crucial. Because if it's reality, you can't change it. If it's trauma, you can heal. Now, before we move on, I want to remind you of this. Recognizing an emotional block isn't about blaming the past. It's about understanding the present. Because now that you know the signs, avoiding before trying, self-sabotage, shame in success, repeating pain, justifying with reality. You can start to observe. Not to judge yourself, but to free yourself. And that's exactly what we'll talk about now. Where these blocks come from, and why your brain still treats them as necessary. Because understanding the origin is the next step toward deactivating them. Now that you know how to recognize the signs of an emotional block, avoiding before trying, self-sabotage, shame in success, repeating pain, justifying with reality. Let's go deeper. Where do these blocks come from? Because, as we've seen, they don't appear out of nowhere. They're learned. Often in silence. Often without us noticing. And understanding their origin isn't about blaming anyone. Not your parents. Not your past. It's about breaking the automatic cycle. It's about seeing that what you feel isn't a universal law, but a response to a painful experience. And when you understand where it came from, the block loses some of its absolute power. Origin 1, Childhood, the laboratory of emotions. Most of our emotional blocks were formed before age 8. At this stage, the mind is like a sponge. You don't filter. You absorb. Everything feels true. A look, a phrase, a silence, a laugh. And every experience, big or small, can become a survival rule. For example, a child says, "I want to be a singer." An adult replies, "That won't make money." Be realistic. What does the child learn? My dreams aren't valid. If I take risks, I'll be dismissed. Over time, this becomes a block. In adolescence, they avoid singing in public. As an adult, they shy away from anything that requires visibility. Or, a child cries. An adult says, "Boys don't cry." Or, "Stop being dramatic, or I'll leave." What do they learn? My emotions are dangerous. If I open up, I'll be abandoned. And this becomes an emotional block. They grow up afraid to ask for help. Afraid to show vulnerability. Afraid to be who they really are. See, it wasn't extreme trauma. It was a repeated pattern. But over time, it became identity. Origin 2, minor trauma, what wasn't severe, but left a mark. Many times, the block comes from something not considered traumatic by society. No abuse. No violence. But it hurt. Things like being excluded from the group at school. Getting rejected with humiliation. Being compared to a sibling. Hearing, "You'll never succeed." Watching your parents separate without explanation. These experiences might seem small. But to a child, they're emotional earthquakes. And the brain doesn't just record the event. It creates a survival lesson. Example. Someone was humiliated in front of the class for messing up a presentation. Afterward, they developed the block. Speaking in public equals danger. Being seen equals being attacked. Years later, even though they're competent, they avoid meetings, interviews, stages. Not because they lack ability, but out of loyalty to an old memory. The problem? The brain doesn't update the threat. It keeps protecting as if the danger still exists. Origin 3. Repetition, what repeats becomes truth. Sometimes, the block doesn't come from one event, but from constant repetition. Like, you grew up hearing, "Money brings envy." "Rich people are greedy." "Work is a duty." Over time, this becomes, "If I earn more, I'll be punished." "Rest is laziness." "Success isolates me." Or, "You were always the responsible one in the family. You cared for siblings, parents, problems. And you learned, if I don't do it, no one will. My needs come last." And now, at work, you don't delegate. At home, you don't ask for help. Because deep down, you believe. Caring is my role. Stopping means failing. Repetition teaches. And what repeats becomes identity. Origin 4, the family system, what the family believes, you inherit. Blocks are also passed down through families, like silent inheritance. Like. In your family, was love shown through control? Then you learned. If you love, you demand. If you don't control, you don't care. Or. Did your parents suffer a lot to have little? Then you might believe. To deserve, I must suffer. Happiness comes after effort. Or. Did someone in your family have a tragic end for daring too much? You might have internalized. If I stand out, something bad will happen. It's safer to stay unnoticed. These beliefs aren't spoken. They're lived. And you absorb them like natural laws. Origin 5, culture, what the world teaches. Beyond family, there's culture. Messages we hear all the time. Men don't cry. Women need to marry. Success means house, car, family. Happiness is a goal. And if you don't fit, the block forms. I'm wrong. I'm not enough. I'm behind in life. Society creates a script. And if you deviate, you feel like you're failing. But you're not. You're just questioning a collective program. Now, here's an important truth. You didn't choose these blocks. But you can choose not to be ruled by them. Because understanding the origin isn't about blame. It's about liberation. When you see that a block came from a schoolyard humiliation, a childhood phrase, a family pattern, it stops being a universal truth. And becomes a learned response. And learned responses can be rebalanced. Before we move on, I want to leave you with this. Emotional blocks aren't flaws. They were survival strategies. They protected you. Kept you in the known. Shielded you from bigger risks. But now, maybe you're ready for something different. And that's exactly what we'll talk about now. How to speak to these blocks, with courage, curiosity, and new evidence. Because recognizing and understanding isn't the end. It's the beginning of a new story. So far, we've come a long way. We started by understanding that the past isn't over. It lives inside you like an invisible protection system. Then, we learned how to recognize the signs of an emotional block. Avoiding before trying, self-sabotaging, feeling shame at praise, repeating pain. And finally, we dove into the origins, childhood, minor trauma, repetition, family, culture. But now we arrive at the turning point. How do you talk to this emotional block, not with force, but with curiosity and courage? Because many times, we try to push through. I'll force myself to speak up. I won't be afraid anymore. I'll just do it. And when fear returns, and it always does, you think, I failed. I'll never change. But maybe the problem isn't you. It's the method. Because emotional blocks aren't enemies. They're outdated guardians. And guardians don't respond to force. They respond to dialogue. So let's learn how to talk to them. Step 1, name the block. The first thing is to bring the block out of the shadows. Instead of leaving it as a vague feeling, like fear, anxiety, I can't put it into words. For example, instead of, I'm afraid to speak in public, say, my block is called, being seen is dangerous. Instead of, I keep quitting my projects, say, my block is called, risk leads to loss. Instead of, I feel like a fraud, say, my block is called, success brings punishment. When you name it, the block stops being a ghost. It becomes concrete. And the moment you see it clearly, it already loses some of its power. Step 2, ask, who are you protecting? Now, look at that block and ask this question. Who are you trying to protect? Because most of the time, the block isn't about you now. It's about a younger version of you. If your block is, risk leads to loss. Ask. What child was there when this happened? Was it when you bet everything on a project and were humiliated? When you invested in someone and got abandoned? See. The block didn't appear to limit you. It appeared to protect a fragile child. And it still thinks that child needs it. Step 3, thank it, and take over. This is one of the most powerful steps. Say, out loud or in writing. Thank you for trying to protect me. You kept me safe for years. But now I'm here. I can take care of us. Seems simple. It's revolutionary. Because you're not attacking the block. You're acknowledging its intention, and stepping into the role of the adult protector. It's like an adoptive parent saying to a temporary guardian, I've arrived. I'll take care of the child now. And in that moment, your nervous system begins to relax. Step 4, create new evidence, even if small. The brain loves patterns. And it loves real proof even more. So to deactivate a block, you need to collect new evidence. For example, if your block is, speaking up equals danger, you don't need to start with a TED Talk. Begin with sending a voice message in a work group, commenting in a live session, asking a question after a meeting. Every time you do this and nothing bad happens, you create a new memory. And each new memory weakens the old program. Step 5, practice the new behavior, even with fear. Change doesn't start with courage. It starts with action, even without courage. Just like you learn to swim even with fear of water. You can act as if the block were already gone. For example, if your block is, asking for help is weakness, do something small. Can you help me with this? I need a break. I'm tired. It doesn't matter if you feel fear. The important thing is that you chose differently. And every choice is a vote for the new reality. Step 6, allow setbacks, without guilt. You will fall back. You'll avoid. You'll freeze. You'll doubt. And that's okay. Because transformation isn't about never falling. It's about getting up faster. If you avoided a presentation today, but tomorrow sent a voice note, that's progress. If you sabotaged, but now you understand why, that's evolution. The block is still there. Yes. But it's no longer in charge. Now, before we move on, I want to remind you of this. Talking to an emotional block isn't a one-time event. It's a process. You won't wake up tomorrow completely free. But you'll start to notice when it shows up. You'll start to respond differently. And every time you do, the block loses a little control. And that's exactly what we'll talk about now. How to live with this transformation, without pressure, without perfection, with patience. Because changing an internal program takes time. But it's possible. Now, we're getting to an important phase. Because after recognizing the block, understanding its origins, and starting to talk to it, comes the question many people ask. Okay, I get it. But how does this actually become real in my daily life? Because in the end, we don't just want reflection. We want change. We want to walk forward, even while rebuilding the ground beneath us. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about now. How to live with transformation, without pressure, without perfection, with patience. Because changing an internal program isn't like changing clothes. It's like rebuilding a house while still living in it. You'll be in the middle of the construction. There will be days of progress, and days of backslide. And all of that is part of the journey. First, accept that the block will come back. Change isn't linear. Even after weeks of saying, risk isn't danger. One day, before a new opportunity, it will whisper again. You'll fail. They'll laugh at you. Or, after months of feeling proud of a win, you'll feel that old shame return. This was luck. You don't deserve this. And then, what do? Don't blame yourself. Don't think, I haven't changed at all. I'm back to square one. No. Change isn't when the block disappears. It's when you recognize it's back. And choose not to believe it as much as before. It's like an old habit. It shows up. But you don't have to obey. And every time you say, ah, it's you again. But today, I choose a different truth. That's a victory. Second, create rituals that reinforce the new truth. The mind needs repetition to change. That's why small daily rituals are more powerful than big promises. Choose one simple habit that represents your new freedom. For example, if your old block was, asking for help is weakness. Every week, do something small asking for support. Can you help me with this? I need advice. And right, today, I asked for help. Nothing bad happened. If it was, success brings envy. Celebrate your wins, even if it's just, I finished the project. I did my best. Say it out loud. Smile. Thank yourself. If it was, love hurts. Write a phrase on your mirror. Healthy relationships are possible. And read it every day. These rituals don't change the block overnight. But over time, they reprogram your inner system. It's like watering a plant. You don't see growth the next day. But with consistency, it transforms. Third, be patient with setbacks. You will fall back. You'll repeat the pattern. You'll self-sabotage. You'll doubt. And that's okay. Because transformation isn't about never falling. It's about getting up faster. It's about noticing sooner. It's about having less guilt. See, if you fell, but now you notice it faster than before. That's progress. If you repeated the mistake, but now you understand why. That's evolution. If you sabotaged, but now you don't shame yourself like before. That's healing. The point isn't the fall. It's what you do after. Fourth, celebrate the quiet signs of change. Change doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes, it comes in silence. Like when you ask for help without feeling weak. You accept a compliment without downplaying it. You say no and don't feel guilty. You feel happy and don't wait for punishment. You fail and think, it's okay. I'll try again. These moments seem small. But they're huge. Because they're evidence that the program is shifting. That you're no longer just repeating the past. So when this happens, acknowledge it. Say, this is different. This is new. Fifth, remember you're not alone. Many people are on this journey. In silence. In internal struggle. In trying to live more authentically. And sometimes, just knowing that can make you feel less broken. You're not broken. You're not behind. You're waking up. And waking up hurts. Because it's the end of a comfortable illusion. It's the beginning of a more real life, fragile, yes, but also fuller. Now, before we move to the end, I want to leave you with this. You don't need to eliminate all emotional blocks to be free. Just start questioning one. Because when you break free from one, you create space to choose another. And over time, that space grows. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to keep going. Because the path isn't about total transformation. It's about small choices aligned with who you want to be. And that's exactly what we'll close with now. The final invitation. The invitation to choose a new path. Not out of obligation, but out of desire. We've come to the end. But in a way, maybe it's just the beginning. Because everything we've talked about here, emotional blocks, patterns, origins, transformation, wasn't meant for you to just listen, agree, and move on as if nothing changed. It was meant to provoke you. To remind you of something you already know, but that the world keeps trying to make you forget. You don't have to live on autopilot. You can choose a new path. Even if it's scary. And the first step doesn't need to be big. It can be quiet. It can be just one gesture. So before we finish, I want to leave you with a practical invitation, simple, but deep. Call it the first step. Here's the challenge. Today, or tomorrow, create one moment of pause. Just one. 5 to 10 minutes. During that time, think of one area of your life where you feel stuck. It could be work, love, money, or yourself. And then, ask yourself these 3 questions, out loud or in writing. What is the block keeping me from moving forward here? X. If I open up, I'll be rejected. Success brings punishment. Asking for help is weakness. Who was I protecting when I learned this? What child? In what situation? What happened? What would I choose to believe today, if I wanted to free myself? X. I can take risks safely. I deserve recognition. I am worthy of care. You don't need all the answers. You just need to start asking. Because the moment you name the block, it stops being an invisible law and becomes something you can choose to question. Why does this challenge work? Because it doesn't demand immediate change. It asks for awareness. And awareness is the first act of freedom. You can spend years avoiding situations without knowing why. But the second you ask, why am I afraid of this? The program begins to waver. And over time, you'll realize you didn't choose the fear. The fear chose you. And now, you have the power to say, I see you. Thank you for trying to protect me. But today, I choose a different truth. Let me tell you a simple story. A man told me that, for years, he had a block. If I stand out, they'll destroy me. It came from a teenage experience. He presented a project at school, got praised. And in the following days, became the target of jokes and exclusion. From then on, he faded into the background. Avoided anything that drew attention. Until one day, he did the exercise. Asked where the fear came from. Saw the scene clearly. And said, thank you for trying to protect me, kid. But now I'm here. And he started small. Sent an email with an idea. Then spoke up in a meeting. Then presented a project. Not heroic. But each step was a choice. And a year later, he told me. Now, when I speak in public, I still feel fear. But I don't obey it anymore. It wasn't magic. It was a process. One step, then another. Choosing, every day, to believe in something new. So my invitation to you today is this. Start small. Start with one question. Start with one written phrase. You don't need to believe in the new truth yet. You just need to open space for it to exist. Just like you don't need to believe you can fly to spread your wings. You just need to decide you want to try. Before I close, I want to leave you with a quote, from a writer I deeply admire, Naila Tamara. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to stop repeating what isn't you. Because deep down, freeing yourself from an emotional block isn't about creating a new self. It's about recovering what was always there. Before fear, before guilt, before repetition. It's about remembering you weren't born to suffer. Or to hide. Or to shrink. You were born to live. With courage. With truth. With choice. Thank you for being here. For giving an hour of your time. Such a rare and precious thing. To look inside, reflect, listen. If this resonated with you, you don't need to share it. You don't need to comment. You just need to do one thing. Today, create a moment of pause. Ask. Write. Choose. Because the step that changes everything might not be grand. It might just be a gesture of courage. Of saying, enough. I want a different path. Thank you for watching. And more than that, thank you for showing up. Until the next step.